you had an attack on the camp?
No. No, they attacked the base down at what is that place? Rupana. They attacked the base there and they killed one officer there, and they planted 2 mines as well. The 5 medics in it was in a vehicle, blow them up. Well, they weren't killed, but they were hurt, badly in the.
As long as you don't catch anything of this in the foreground.
No hoba nini no kuli bahala kwa hapo sasho oba meno ngeno wambo kai na bari atni ngeno baya ko putumbere longe na madipa ogarish
so sy gaan selfs altyd ter saam met sy mense want hy luister altyd by sy mense as hy mense praat want die mense hulle kom net vir hom sê hulle is te baie tevrede soos die soldaat hier so by die Wampland maar hulle is maar net 'n bietjie mon want maak nie saak want die mense hulle sien hulle graag die soldate hulle is te baie tevrede daarvan.
These people are glad that the South African soldiers are here. The only moans that they have in this stage are those that are being intimidated by SWAPO. They are moaning that there are too few South African soldiers here. Now,
say, are there villagers who oppose them? Perhaps the ones who support SWAPO.
Ja. Is daar mense wat teen die Suid-Afrikaanse soldate hier is by sy mense? Is daar mense wat nie die soldate hier wil hê nie? Ondersteun.
Penalty kombinga himba pamoja na mamwe abai na hala wako itamo himba kuja pamoja hadruwa ba menone ne kombinga hiwa pondishi.
Eno kashimba oshini shishiba shoshi ngenga metalombulenge ba ferash ordat. Shi ngapa penaso tacho pa hupupa. Avere apa penaso tacho trekking mona po benya op.
Ja, die mense is maar net tevrede soos altyd wat hier so tevrede. Maar jy weet nou nie die ander mense wat nie tevrede met die mense wat nie miskien die mense wat die glo vir die SWAPO maar die weermag is baie goed van hulle. Is die mense wat nie so die weermag gaan naby hulle in. Die SWAPO kom vat hulle net daar so maar die mense wat naby is, die soldate is, hulle lewe baie lekker.
He says no, he doesn't know why. The people that are against the soldiers don't tell him that they are. And he says, but what everyone in his area knows is that if you stay around the South African soldiers where you get protection, then your life is good.
Ask him, is there any political presence of SWAPO as opposed to the insurgent presence?
Daar is nou die mense wat kom met die wapen wat die oorlog maak, maar is daar ander SWAPO mense wat net die politiek praat?
Op penalty wat nou man gaan en
Die man. Die man sit. Ek doen dit.
Kijk de venten.
Sit sommer. Die kerk wil nie in die algemeen, ons gaan nie beleid of iets nie, maar hulle wil in die algemeen daarom 'n idee kry van wat so soort lewe dit in die kamp is en of dit makes it easy. En wat ons nou sal doen is ons sal maar die vrae monitor sodat julle dan nou nie verklaringe maak oor dinge waaroor dit nie verklaringe moet gemaak word.
They're coming into contact with us. You see, they're trying to just infiltrate and then lie low until the big day. I think this is what everybody thinks of. There's a certain big day ahead, and that's the day they'll rise up and cause trouble. Now, I reckon often they even bypass the civilian or South African troops just to stay out of trouble, not to be known.
Give him a smile, Russell. Give him a smile.
This is scary, sir.
Yeah, sure.
Ga je samen dan?
Ja, ik kan zo.
Should there be a look back?
Ben je ook zo?
Ja.
Kom.
There we go.
12 people have been killed in fighting in Pretoria recently. Since then, you have met for the first time with your political rivals, notably the Democratic Turnhuller Alliance, to try to bring peace. Do you foresee future meetings and a lessening of political tension?
The reason why we met these people is because these 10 people, 10 out of these 12 people who have died, have been killed by the DTA people, by the DTA elements, especially NUDO. And our people were not involved in any fighting. And when they invited us to come and discuss this, how we can solve this problem in Pretoria, we came to them merely to listen to them what proposals they're having as to how to solve the problem. We are prepared to indicate to them that if there are tensions of this nature, we'd always be prepared, especially when lives are being lost. But we are not going to discuss any politics with them because we feel that it's completely out of question.
I see.
I must just add here that
Okay.
I must also add at the same time that we are quite aware of the fact that this meeting with us, with the DTA, is they are trying to make political capital out of that. And if they think they can cause more trouble of this nature in order to have us with them, then they are making a mistake. We can only be drawn as far as we feel it is relevant. But if we feel we are being drawn into this thing, then we'll definitely not talk to them.
You don't think there's any possibility of a split occurring between the two sections of SWAPO, internally and externally, over this matter?
That's completely out of question.
You personally agreed to try to control SWAPO supporters in the township. Have you succeeded?
General, what would be the effect if South African troops were withdrawn to the south of Southwest Africa as demanded by SWAPO?
Well, I think at the moment there is, under the present circumstances, no possibility at all of security forces being withdrawn to the south, this is a point of negotiation between the South African government and the 5 Western powers, and as far as I know, the possibility of security forces being withdrawn can only be done after a peace period has been established for a certain time.
What kind of a war is being fought along the Angola border, and what conditions do South African soldiers find themselves in there?
Well, the war is firstly a case of terrorists intimidating and terrorizing the local population, and in this respect the intensity is fairly high. As you know, the previous Chief Minister of Ovambo was assassinated, and then recently another Ovambo minister has been assassinated. Apart from these acts of terrorism, there is on record a case or various cases of children being abducted, of headmen being killed. As regards the involvement of the security forces, the type of war in which they find themselves is that they continuously seek to stabilize the situation by acting against terrorism and against political assassination, and their main effort is to make contact with the terrorists in order to curb intimidation. The main problem is that the terrorists avoid at all costs contact with the security forces.
Has there been an increase in guerrilla activity since South African Foreign Minister Mr. Pik Botha came back from the stalled Western Initiative talks in New York last month?
There has been an increase in the rate of incidents which started whilst the Foreign Minister was in New York, and I'm now referring to the murder, the political assassination of Minister Shiagaya. And since then, there have also been other incidents: abduction, killing of headmen, a rocket attack on a vehicle, killing a number of the occupants, etc. But whether this is only a short-term fluctuation or whether this is the beginning of a long-term trend is difficult to say at this stage.
Do the guerrillas have a high standard of training?
Yes, since Russians, East Germans and especially Cubans started to invade Angola, and since they started helping the terrorist organizations logistically and with training and with leadership and advice, there has been an increase in the standard of training and efficiency of the terrorist groups.
Are there any foreign advisors, such as Cubans, East Germans or South Koreans, crossing with SWAPO people from Angola or Zambia into Ovambo and Caprivi?
We have documentary proof, and intelligence also indicates that there are foreign advisors, such as you've mentioned, Russians, East Germans and Cubans. Whether they have crossed over the border from Angola into Southwest Africa and Namibia is something which we cannot prove at this stage.
One of the basic requirements to wage a successful guerrilla war is to have the support of the people. SWAPO claims it has massive support in Ovambo. Do you agree?
Well, this terrorist organization which you're referring to also claimed that they have attacked Okahanja, Grootfontein, Inana, Ondangwa and various other places. You can go to Okahanja now and see for yourself that there is absolute no truth in their claims, in their allegations. I also have reason to believe that you have visited Inana personally, and where you have seen for yourself that their claims are unjustified. In this particular case, they are claiming the support of the local population. I can only say if that was in fact the case, then there wouldn't have been a request on the part of the local political leaders to the South African government to provide security.
SWAPO claims that the South African troops intimidate the people. How do you react to that?
There is absolutely no proof of troops intimidating the people. On the contrary, we have been thanked by many authorities, leaders of the local population, political leaders, and even church organizations for the assistance that we have given them in the service that they render to the local population.
How do you react to charges that South Africa would rather have its defence line in northern Southwest Africa rather than on the banks of the Orange River, and that the main strategy is to keep military control of Southwest Africa?
I'm concerned with the security of Southwest Africa, and this is our primary task, to protect Southwest Africa and all its peoples against intimidation and terrorism. If stabilizing the situation in Southwest Africa means also stabilizing the situation in the whole of Southern Africa, that could be a bonus for South Africa. But primarily, the security forces in Southwest Africa, what did I say, the reason, you'll have to edit this a bit. It's a debatable point if it's advantageous or disadvantageous for South Africa to have a lengthy border in the north or a much shorter borderline further south. I am primarily concerned with the security of Southwest Africa. The security forces in Southwest Africa are there for the protection of Southwest Africa and all its peoples against intimidation and terrorism, and to create an atmosphere of stability in which a free political process will be possible. If stability in Southwest Africa means greater stability in the whole of Southern Africa, that could well be a welcome bonus.
If a settlement based on the Western Initiative does materialize, would your men cooperate easily with international troops sent in with the United Nations? Do you foresee any difficulties there? And how do you think the Ovambo people would react?
If such an agreement is reached between the respective diplomats, politicians and governments, I am sure that the security forces will cooperate with other forces in the area, merely because we have a well-disciplined force. About how the Ovambo people will react, I think you should rather ask them. I must say, however, that many of the population groups in Southwest Africa associate the terrorist organization with the United Nations. So how welcome they will be to the certain elements of the local population is an open question.
If the international community refuses to accept an internal settlement, is there a danger of a conventional warfare?
I think that would be mere speculation at this stage.
What do you see as your ultimate aim in Southwest Africa?
I don't think that now is the time to talk about the ultimate aim. I would rather restrict my answer to the immediate future. And I think the main aim for the immediate future is to support the Administrator General by creating stability, peace and order, so that the political process and the free election could go along.
What strategy are you using to achieve that aim?
The military strategy would be subject to the political strategy, and I'm afraid that is not for me to comment upon.